to another video from MicroRooster. Today's topic will be distribution services. Alright, so I'm going to launch desktop, and to use or to set up distribution services you have to be on a server. So you can't use a 2-tier, you have to use a 3-tier or more. Some of the components, or most of them, are available in the administration, though you do have some control from the web component. So let's just go and expand some of these. Sorry, wrong one. Configuration managers. So as you see here, there's going to be schedules, events, subscriptions, and delivery managers, transmitters, devices, and contacts. Pretty much all of those work together in distribution services to kind of give you the complete distributed control over your reports, over the emails, contacts, etc., printers, everything. So let's start with them from the bottom up. There are events. Let's call them well, they call them events, but they really are triggers. So let's just look at this new event. I want to edit it, and I notice I can't edit it because an event is, think about it like a button, it is static. So I'm going to delete this event and recreate it. I'm going to right click here while I'm in events, and new, it'll give me only one option, which is event. Okay, so I'm going to call it my MicroStrategy Rooster event. Okay, there we go. So if you noticed, that's it, I'm done. There's nothing else to do except triggering it. Okay, so when I created this event, there's two things to keep in mind. An event is a manual button, if you want to call it, that can be triggered right here. So I can trigger this, which means this will notify the rest of MicroStrategy that this has been activated. Okay, what does that mean? That means nothing unless it's connected to a schedule, and I'll show you what that means. But why do we create them if there's just buttons, or they're just a trigger that can be triggered? Well, the idea is you can either trigger it manually here, or you could, outside MicroStrategy, in the command manager, for instance, have a script that says go in and trigger this event based on some criteria outside. Okay, or you can use a Windows, for example, you can use a Windows schedule to trigger an event manually that says, for instance, when the power when the computer restarts, go and trigger this event. This event might might link to a schedule that triggers a report to an administrator, for instance. So again, these are manual events that can be triggered outside MicroStrategy or manually from inside. Okay, they mean nothing on their own until they're utilized. And where do they get utilized? They get utilized in schedules. Let's create a schedule. There's two types of schedules, okay, or two forms. So again, you have to be in that folder, new schedule. Again, I'm assuming you have a license to distribution services, okay, whether it's 921 or up. So my new schedule, I'm going to call my MicroStrategy schedule. Okay, and summary as description, that's fine, default. Now notice here, either time triggered or event triggered. Remember that event that we created? That's where it gets utilized. And event trigger schedules are activated, specific events occur. For example, data warehouse loaded, etc. So let's connect it to event trigger, then we'll come back and create a time trigger. So when do you want it to start? You can choose today's date or any date you want. Do you want it to end? For example, you just want it to run for a few days, or for a few months, or for a week. Let's just do it for a week, just so it doesn't keep sending me items. Alright, so now it says select the event you want to trigger. Notice my MicroStrategy Rooster event that I just created is right there. Now if I don't have the event that I need, I can also create an event on the fly. But it's a better practice to create them where they should be created first, so you can keep track of them. So I'm going to say, okay, this schedule runs whenever this event is triggered. It cannot be easier than this with event triggers. Okay, so where does it go? Here we go. So what does it do for me? Still Nothing. You have to use it in a subscription to make an effect. Before we go to the subscriptions, let's rename this and call my MR schedule, and I'm going to say event-based. Okay, I'm going to create another one, time-based. Time-based is probably the most utilized for the fact that time is a convenient, repeatable, I would say variable. Okay, so my MR schedule, and this is time-based. Okay, so time, I'm going to keep it time triggered. I don't need an event for time triggered. Time will use the clock to trigger things. And I want to start it and I want to end it by, let's give it a week or less. And I want it to occur daily, every one day, or I could say weekly, every let's say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Or I could have it monthly, and I could say execute at when does this happen. So on that day or on these days, I want it to run at a certain time, and I can say 12, let's say p.m. okay, or 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. Most of these, if you notice, will be running in the a.m. Most people like to trigger schedules in the a.m. so that they run when the servers are not highly utilized and the reports that use them or scheduled to them can run at that time. However, you might have a special requirement that says, no, I need to have a noon report, so you can trigger a noon report. Okay. Next, here's the summary, and there we go. Finish. So now I have a time schedule and an event schedule. They still are not being utilized at this point. Okay, keep that in mind. So we'll create an event, create 2 schedules, and we need to create a subscription. We'll create new, or not new, in this case it's called subscription creation wizard, which also should be available up here. Subscription, there we go, subscription creation wizard. And there's another item called schedule admin task. We'll come to that at the end. So subscription up here from administration, or right click subscription wizard. So there's 5 steps. We're going to walk through them quickly. So I'm going to choose the project that I'm in that I want to schedule for. So I'm going to use this case. I have one project, but you have multiple. There's 4 delivery types. I can say when this schedule is, or when this subscription runs, I want you to update the cache of a report, refresh a cube, add a report to a history list, or push it into a mobile if it was mobile ready report. So let's just do one of them. All of them run the same way. Each one just makes the report available in a different location. This one doesn't make it available, it just refreshes the cache. So if it's already in your history list, you get today's cache. If it's a cube, you get today's cube, or whatever schedule you have. History list, the report will run and will be sitting in your history inbox within MicroStrategy, or your mobile. If you're using the MicroStrategy mobile app, it'll be sitting waiting for you to, or cached for you in your mobile, if you want to use that term. So let's just use history list. Alright, which report do you want to run? Let's just go select one arbitrarily. Okay, it shows you even hidden because you're an admin. It can show you even hidden reports and dashboards. Okay, so I'm just going to select energy area mashup state level report. Okay, next, so the schedule, here's where things start coming together. Which schedule do you want to use? Do you want it to be using your time-based schedule, which was running every weekday at, I think, 1 a.m. we had it? Or do you want it to be event triggered, meaning when an external event triggers your event, this subscription will see that that schedule has been activated and run. Can't get simpler than that. This is manual and this is time. Okay, you can choose one, but you can't choose both. Let's just use one of them. It's the same. Now, who gets this? Meaning, which user Do you want to update the history list or the cache for? Again, I'm the administrator, so it'll default to administrator. But if you have other users, you can go to wherever group they are. This is all your groups. You'll go to everyone if you don't know which group they belong to. And so I have another guy called Postal. I can add him. So I can have multiple selected members or individual. Okay. We'll just keep it multiple. Okay. Yeah, and you can run the subscription immediately. This is good for testing something. If you had a time event, for instance, or an event that you weren't sure if it was going to be triggered or how it looks like when the report runs, you can have a test. So this lets you see the result of your subscription. It's a good practice to probably trigger it every time. Okay. Next, advanced properties. You can read through them. There's rerun against the warehouse. This is especially good for dashboards. Allow users to unsubscribe themselves or not. This usually is allowed if you don't care, but if they must get it, you don't. Can they change the delivery settings? Meaning, can they change the time, for instance? Do you want it to override older version? Usually yes. Do you want it to expire? You can let it expire on a certain date. Do not create or update cache. If you do not update cache in a history list, it'll create a new version. And you can change personalization. If it was prompted, they can change the prompt answers. Yeah. Delivery notification. Do you want them to get an email every time that report becomes available? So in this case, there was a history list, and you say, okay, yeah, tell them whenever it's ready in their history list. Usually you don't want to do that unless, you know, it's like a monthly report so that they remember. Okay, great. So we're good on so far. Here's the summary. Read through it. Make sure that, you know, everything you selected meets what you expected. When you're done, finish. Okay, great. Remember the good thing about this. So you notice it created two subsets because it had two users, and I can actually delete one of them and say I'm subscribed to the postal guy. Okay, and there you go. Now it's only one guy subscribed. Or I can right click and edit, okay, and add more people to it. Okay, so once you create it, you can edit it. Okay, no big deal. Events, once you create them, you cannot edit them. You can create new ones and remove old ones. Schedules can be edited to pick a new event or a new time schedule. Subscriptions these are subscribed. So I subscribe this report to the administrator to receive an email and to populate it in the history list. Only wants a valid email address. So I'm going to say test. So it's trying to get me to add an address if I want to use that option. So let's call it test@test.com and see if this works. And it's an email from a generic email. Okay, there we go. So I was trying to add a notification to a file which didn't make sense. Okay, so let's stop with this and we'll go back and look at the different delivery managers. So what do we have? We have transmitters, devices, and contacts. So we can create contacts from outside or from within here by the user or independent. A user can have a contact can be independent, there can be contact groups. So you can have a contact that's not connected to a user that's connected to a contact. You can create the contact, then link it to the user. You can create the contact inside the user. So let's just do this. The user editor, and I'm going to change delivery and add contacts and addresses. Now what is the difference between an address and a contact? Well, an address is directly linked, and it can be an email. Let me show you. It can be an email or any delivery type. Now you're wondering, where did these types come from? Well, they're coming from these transmitters. And the type of email, which device you're sending from, are coming from your devices folder. So you have the option to combine any transmitter with the different devices that it is allowed to utilize. You can give it a name, say my MR email, and then say, you know, something like mr@mr.com, for instance. Save it as default or just save it. You can have multiple addresses and multiple contacts. Alright, so just realize that you can be creating multiple things within these editors. All of them will end up here. Everything you create there will end up in this list, and you can delete them from here or edit them from here. Okay. And again, you can disable contact, meaning you keep the contact file, but you can disable its context. Let's go to transmitters. A transmitter is simply saying the type of delivery this contact uses is either an email, a file, a printer, or a mobile, iPad, iPhone, etc. Okay, you can create new ones. Okay, create new ones, or you can just duplicate, and I recommend duplicating. So let's duplicate the printer and see what it looks like. Say copy of prints here. So I'll just call it MR print. Prints to network, prints to printers. So I'm just creating something that says, okay, this is a transmitter for printing. What does it do at this point? Again, nothing. But the device is where it matters. So I'm going to create a printing device. Okay, say print, but use this printer transmitter. And I'm going to choose a printer. This is my personal printer. So I'm going to select it. Okay, great. Next I'll call it MR printer. Okay. And I have some printing properties, I have PDF properties and advanced properties that I can link. Okay. Just in case you're also printing to a file. Great. Close it. So now MR printer is personalized to print to my printer, or you can have your own server printer if it's a job site. So we did that, the transmitter, we created a device, and now my contact, for instance, administrator. So I'm going to create a new address. You could use a context, but I think addresses are easier because they're automatically linked. Okay, so I'm going to call this print to my printer, MicroRooster. And then the physical address, let's just say MR print. Okay, let's see if it lets us go. There you go. So now I have a print contact associated with administrators. So when I schedule something to run for my administrator, I can let it print to my printer. Okay. So now what do? We're done with this part of the administration part. Let's go actually do the implementation part, or the activation. So I'm going to go to a report. You can do it from the subscriptions like we showed here, or you can just browse to a report, or a dashboard. Let's do this dashboard for instance. Let's schedule delivery to history, cache, or mobile. Okay. You can also see dependent subscriptions if you click here. And finally, you can just use the administrator scheduling subscription creation, which I recommend using. And we're going to create it. We're going to let it do a history list. Let's use this guy. Okay. Next, what do you want? Which schedule do you want it to use? My event-based to administrator. That's fine. You can run it immediately or not. What will this do? It'll trigger this report when this event is triggered. Again, we can use the time as well to administrator. Great. So whenever these triggers are triggered, the schedule is activated by time. This report runs. Okay. But what about those devices that I created? How do I use those? Well, here's the cool part. The web needs to be in play. So you got to log into your account. Let's disconnect it and connect it to make sure it picks up everything I have. A little bit slower. Let's do this. Connecting. Let's go to my website or my project. So if you noticed earlier that we saw the update, history list, etc., but we didn't see file, print, all those other cool stuff, because those are activated from here. So notice when every file or report that's allowed subscriptions, and you can disallow subscriptions for certain reports, the user clicks here. Notice this. A user can set up history, mobile, email, file, and print. Let's add a print subscription, see what happens. So, do you want to send it now? Do you want to print now, this dashboard? Or do you want to schedule it? So let's use this event-based, right? And which printer device do you want? Remember that one, print to my printer, MicroRooster? There it is. Do you want to expand the layouts if you have multiple layouts? Do you want it to expand page by fields, meaning it'll print each page by field on a separate page? Do you want it all, or do you want the first page? Do you want to show a preview now, or send a preview now, or do you don't? Do you want it to stop delivering after a certain date? Do you want to get an email notification? And you can type. Could be at any of your email devices. Remember, we had printer devices, and here's email devices, because you might have an Outlook account, you might have a general work account, you can have a webmail linked to your account, meaning when it sends a notification, it'll go through that transmitter. Okay, it'll try to go through your whatever you set up as an email device, or your admin has set up in this case. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Let's close this. Created successfully. Great. So whenever that event triggers, this should trigger your printer. So let's say you were using Command Manager. What happens? Command Manager will tell. Can't remember. Was this time-based? No, it's event-based. So what happens is your Command Manager will trigger this, or you can manually trigger it. Okay, and you won't be able to see this, but since it's triggered now, this should be sent to my printer. Now, if you don't believe me, we can test it by history list. Let's create a history list subscription, and let's do it event-based, administrator, and let's run it immediately. And let's ignore the email. They go into your subscriptions history list right here. That's kind of unique. I didn't realize that. So they're ready here. You should be able to click it and view it. Hopefully it won't take too long because it's already cached. And it shouldn't look good here because this was a mobile dashboard. There you go. Let's go back. Now if you want to unsubscribe, again under your My Subscriptions, we'll go here and you can unsubscribe whichever. I have some previously subscribed, some mobile, and that's our printer subscription that we had here. And unsubscribe whichever ones we want. You can also edit a subscription on the fly. Gives you back this screen and says, okay, what do you want to do, etc. Let's unsubscribe this guy, okay? Alrighty, so that pretty much covers our subscriptions and distribution services and everything else you need to know. Again, we didn't create all types of devices, but they're pretty straightforward. You can look at the ones that come out of the box. They're just saying, okay, this is an Outlook device, what is it, MIME, and you can set up the options here, whatever you need. And you can set up the port and an IP address if it's a smart host. So all these different devices can be created. You can push notifications for iPad. Again, you can give it a name, server. This is the gateway push Apple, and this is the port number. And you can allow the feedback through the other port. Okay, so there's all these devices. Again, I do not recommend you creating your own. Just duplicate and modify. It's easier to do it that way. Okay, so thanks for being patient and working through this distribution services demo, which is not the usual development. It's more of an administrative task. And see you next time.